So in the last video we made, we first downloaded the software NetBeans, and we're now in the first project that we made in the last video, which is just a very simple Java application program. So let's go through kind of what we're seeing a little bit on the screen right now. So all of the text in this area that you're seeing in red is essentially commented in instructions that the program by default gives you, or the software rather. And none of it is going to be used in the actual program itself because those opening tags and closing tags essentially say to the computer when this code gets ran by the computer to say, hey, leave this stuff out of what's called the compiler, so that the compiler doesn't touch this code. It doesn't even register this code because all it is just comments. When you're programming projects, it's good program design to be able to add in comments to different sections of your code, to be able to let other users, developers in the future kind of know what's going on a little bit with the code and being able to follow it a little bit more in English, as opposed to trying to read through what might be very long lines of code and very complicated lines of code. So in the red are all those comments. Now, the package Java intro is essentially the overall overlapping umbrella project of this Java intro project that we've now created, and within that is this class. Now, a class is an area simply of code where it's telling the compiler, okay, all the code contained within this class is what you want to be compiling. So it allows you to structure code in such a way that is perceived by a Java compiler. And then when you get down into this public static void main, this is going to be what's read by the compiler as pretty much the starting point for the code. So you can put another, what is called this whole segment right here is called a method, and we will learn about it in later videos, probably the next video actually. But for now, all you need to know is that it is essentially a segment of code that gets executed by calling it. Now, the initialized method, though, there needs to be one. The one that calls all other methods and other things to be executed in the program is the main method. So for simple purposes, we're going to only work with the main method in today's video. So logical thinking is the essence of all programming, and it is the key to being able to understand programming and be able to write it. So when you think of a lot of programs that you see, a lot of it is related to math, because you have variables, you have some real numbers when you get into more theoretical math, and that is very important to be able to structure simple and complex code at the same time, because you're going to be using constants that are representations of actual numbers. But for a lot of code that is dynamic, we will get to more of that later, but for code that is dynamic, it is important to be able to realize that variables are essentially the most important tool that you have. And so that is essentially kind of just an overlap of what programming is. It's taking a logical theory and placing it into an executable programmatic computational line so that a computer can read it. So to get started, the first thing we're going to do today is we are going to create a simple, probably up to 8 lines of code that allows the user to run this code, and it'll just calculate simple perimeter and area for the inputs that we give it. So we're not going to do anything too complex, but what we are going to get started with is understanding what are called primitive types in the Java language. Now, the most important one, in my opinion, is integers. Integers are any whole number, as you probably know, and in Java they're represented as int, representing int. So we're going to give it an integer of, let's say, for calculating a square is what we'll be doing, or a rectangle rather. Let's say the length, and that is going to be the variable name. So it's an integer called length, and it's going to be equal to 2. And when you end a line, you want to end it with a semicolon. That tells the compiler, hey, this is the end of this line, go on and read the next one. So it understands where logical sentences end and where they begin. And we're going to need one that represents the width. So we'll do int width, and we will say that is equal to 4. Now, very simply, we're going to go in and just calculate the perimeter and the area in 2 separate statements. But because we need something to store that end variable, we have to go in and again create another integer. So that is going to be int perimeter, and we're going to say that is equal to, just like any other math equation, like y is equal to mx plus b in a very simple linear line. So we're going to say perimeter is equal to length, and this is like an asterisk almost, is the representation of multiplication, length times width. Or sorry, it's going to be length to length. Forgot what I was doing. To length plus, and then we're going to do 2 times width. And then for the area, it's going to be much simpler, but it's important to just realize that it can be written very simply. So int area is going to be equal to length times width. And that's all there is. So now we want to be able to kind of read that back out to the computer. And as you can see down here, I was testing this before just to make sure everything was working right syntax wise. But because Java is such a weirdly complex language for so many reasons, it doesn't allow you to just click print or type in print and then the variable. So what we have to do is just type out system.out.print, and we're going to do print line. And the reason is this, I'll show you the difference so that you can see it. So as opposed to just print at the end there. So let's do print parameter. Oh, perimeter. And then we're going to do system.out.print line, and this is going to be area. All right. So we want to be able to tell the output though kind of what it is, the value though, because all this is putting out now is just simply the value of the perimeter, not the area. There's really no description to it. So just to add in, this is called something a string. A string is just a series of characters that is neither a number, it's not recognized as a number, but it's recognized as letters, anything that can pretty much be in a quotation. It can be letters or numbers or any other special characters, but I think there are a distinct few that kind of weigh out, that kind of throw off the code a little bit, even though they're in quotations. But for now, you just need to know that it's letters and numbers that you can put in here. So we're going to say perimeter, colon, and then space, and then we're going to do the same thing for area. And you have to do this plus symbol because it's going to distinguish, because it reads this string as a variable, and you need to be able to say that there's 2 variables in here, even though one is a description and one is an actual value. So this plus allows the compiler to realize that this perimeter is this value as opposed to anything else that it might run out. But typically, if you don't put this plus in, the compiler is just going to run into an error. And then we're going to do area, colon, space, and then plus. And you can see too here, it shows you red. It won't really let you run the program correctly because it's expecting this plus in here. And we can run this now and it will print it out. So we'll go up here to our run button, click run. Perimeter is 12, area is 8. Now if we took out the print line, you can see what happens. It's kind of irritating to look at, but this is what happens without print line. It essentially doesn't establish a new line for the output line. It just keeps it all in the same line. It looks very messy. So this is what it'll look like. It's just kind of mushed together. So that line allows us to make it kind of neat for our intents and purposes of this simple program. So there you are. So this is the first lesson really in Java, in the introduction to Java. Next we'll be covering methods and calling different methods from the main method. I hope you enjoyed and you learned something in today's video.